Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here for a poetry discussion. A poetry discussion that comes to us from the mind of Charles Bukowski in the collection You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense. This poem happens on page 147, and it is titled The Passing of a Great One. And it reads as such. He was the only living writer I ever met who I truly admired, and he was dying when I met him. We in this game are shy on praise, even toward those who do it very well. But I never had this problem with JF. I visited him several times in the hospital. There was never anybody about. And upon entering his room, I was never sure if he was asleep or John. He was stretched there. He was stretched there on that bed, blind and amputated, advanced diabetes. John, it's Hank. He would answer, and then we would talk for a short bit. Mostly he would talk and I would listen. After all, he was our mentor, our God. Ask the dust. Wait until spring. Bandini, Dago Red. All the others. To end up in Hollywood writing movie scripts, that's what killed him. The worst thing, he told me, is bitterness. People end up so bitter. He wasn't bitter, although he had every right to be. At the funeral, I met several of his script writing buddies. Let's write something about John, one of them suggested. I don't think I can, I told them. And, of course, they never did. If you are not finding me through this video, but you have been around for the long haul, I understand what you're thinking, why I particularly would have picked this poem in order to do a poetry discussion. Obviously, he was our God, and he died of diabetes. You're expecting some religious overtones to this, some atheistic overtones, some antichrist overtones, some type of, how do I say it? Something less than orthodox from this. But I'm afraid I can't do that. I'm afraid I can't be that guy today. I think this poem, I don't have a lot of feelings left. This poem might have struck on the one. Is it just me that is super saddened by this? Obviously, I mean Bukowski, and obviously Bukowski set it up the way he set it up. But this idea of everyone who remembers you being so beaten down by the world that they don't really give a damn when you're gone. Anything you worked for. So this is a weird aside, I know. Bear with me maybe for just a few seconds. At one point in my life, a few years ago, I had become interested in precious metals. It's a weird thing, right? Being a silver bug. A lot of people do it. Hey, a lot of weird, lonely white guys end up with precious metals in their house. Guilty as charged. But in that community, one of the things that people do is they go to estate sales. Everybody goes to estate sales. I've never been to an estate sale. People go to estate sales. It's like a garage sale, kind of, right? But sad. And one of the great finds that silver bugs, as they call themselves, or maybe as they're called, I don't know. I don't know if that is a precious term in the precious metals society or not. One of the things they do is they go to these estate sales and they look for silver. People often don't know what they're selling, but they sell somebody's coin collection. And they give it away basically for pennies on the dollar, for what it's worth. Pennies on the dollar. You find it there, give them the money, it's yours. All of a sudden, you've got 30 silver dimes that you bought for $3, right? Or face value, whatever, you know. Well, I guess that is face value, huh? But the thing that is super sad about that is that when that person whose estate that was alive, silver is not known as an appreciating asset. It's known as wealth preservation, right? It's something that someone basically doesn't accidentally happen into. They have to think for themselves for that, right? If you had the opportunity to get gold, yeah, you just buy the gold, right? Gold's going to appreciate, you know, everybody understands that. But silver does not appreciate in that same way. Silver, so the one example that you really hear all the time in that corner of things is, okay, you've got a dime, right? 10 cents doesn't buy anything, right? But if you have a silver dime, it's worth, depending on what the spot price is, $1.60, $1.90, somewhere in there. Okay? Now, interesting, right? Back when dimes were still silver, 1964 and before, a dime could buy you a gallon of gas. Today, that dime won't buy you a gallon of gas, but the $1.64 that dime is worth would get you fairly close. Get you a lot closer than the dime would. It's used as a hedge against inflation by people. So when these people go to estate sales and some wife or son or somebody who's running the estate sale is selling this person's coin collection, and they're giving away what looks like regular dimes for near face value, because it's just dimes. I don't know why he was collecting all these dimes. The guy who died, and it's almost always guys, let's be honest. We're just going to throw around some stereotypes in this video. It's white guys that do this. Those dimes were thought about intensely by the individual who had passed. Every dime that passed through their hands, they checked the rim to see if it was silver or if it was a sandwich dime. Maybe they just looked at the date because they knew when it started and stopped. There was a little bit of concentration on each and every one of those dimes. The quarters, the war nickels, all of these things. Maybe spoons and forks that are sterling silver. That individual set that dime, that war nickel, that quarter, that spoon, that fork aside and said, hey, someday this is going to help. It's not going to be a whole lot of money, but it'll be more than I've got now. Someday I'll have someone to pass this down to. And in that estate sale, that someone who that was supposed to help, that someone who was supposed to be the beneficiary, that someone whose life was supposed to be a little bit better because the guy who saved it said, I have one thing that I can provide, and it is this little bit of concentration to see if this dime is silver. In that moment, the person who is the recipient, who would be the beneficiary, the beneficiary there, that person failed. And with it, the little bit of concentration, the little bit of care that the person who had passed had set aside, that little bit of care is dead too. That little bit of care, that little bit of concentration, that little bit of, you know what? I'm going to make Susie Q's life better. Because I don't have a lot. But I can contribute by paying a little bit of attention with some of the knowledge I got running around in the back of my head. And instead, there's some yag off running a YouTube channel that got those coins for face value or a little above, because there's some reason he kept them. $3.50 and I'll give you $3 worth, right? Something like that. That's sad to me. That's super sad to me. And here, in this poem, I'm going to read it one more time. See if you can catch what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm not making sense. Let me know if I'm not. The passing of a great one. He was the only living writer I ever met who I truly admired, and he was dying when I met him. We in this game are shy on praise, even toward those who do it very well, but I had never had this problem with JF. I visited him several times in the hospital. There was never anybody else about, and upon entering his room, I was never sure if he was asleep or... John? He was stretched out. He was stretched there on that bed, blind and amputated, advanced diabetes. John, it's Hank. He would answer, and then we would talk for a short bit. Mostly he would talk and I would listen. After that, he was our mentor. After all, he was our mentor, our God. Ask the Dust. Wait Until Spring, Bandini, Dago Red, all the others. To end up in Hollywood writing movie scripts, that's what killed him. The worst thing, he told me, is bitterness. People end up so bitter. He wasn't bitter, although he had every right to be. At the funeral, I met several of his script-writing buddies. Let's write something about John, one of them suggested. I don't think I can, I told them. And, of course, they never did. That's the feeling that I get from this poem. That is, maybe I am super weird, and this is just this one small insight to which Adrian is vulnerable. That one hits me, though. That one hits me. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. I have new videos on the channel Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Mondays are for poetry. There is also a new video on my personal channel Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, a link to which can be found in the description below.